Okay. Hi, today we've got Jen Gash from OT Coach in the UK online. We're going to do a little bit of an interview and have a conversation with her about what she does, how she got into it, what's happening over in the UK, and how the OT Coach course might be useful for you. So this will be recorded in the OT Australia SIG so that you can access it at a later date as well. Thanks for coming on, Jen. And hi, Carol.
Hi.
Hi guys.
So, Jen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh gosh, yeah, but I can talk forever, so you'll have to stop me at some point.
Okay.
I've been at OT for sort of about 20, 23, 24 years, something like that. But sort of prior to that, I was always a painter and did a variety of jobs. So I kind of came to OT a little bit, sort of, my mid-20s, I think. And worked in all sorts of areas in OT in the UK. Quickly kind of made my way around various of the OT profession. And I think partly because I had a desire not to get institutionalised, so I would sort of do a job for a couple of years and then move on. Yeah, I know. But I fell into coach training when I was on a maternity leave. Partly, my mum was a nurse therapist, and did some coach training, and she just went, "Oh, Jen, you've got to do this. It's fabulous." And I just thought, "Oh yeah, well, I'm just breastfeeding, but might as well give it give a course a go, like we do." And I absolutely fell in love with the way coaching works. So that was about 13 years ago that I did the first coach training. And it's been, it's taken me so many different places and changed my life in so many ways, which sounds a bit cheesy, but it really has.
Yeah.
So I'm a mum to 2 teenage girls now. They're teenage girls. That's all we need to say about that. And yeah.
Keeping you busy. Okay. So can you tell us how you started OT Coach, or why you started OT Coach?
Yeah, absolutely. It was when I was doing the first coach training, everyone was on the course was very much kind of, oh, what are you going to do with your coach training? What niche are you going to work in? And what's your business going to be called and all this? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I was just doing the training because it's great and I really like it. But there was this sort of, everyone was very active in setting businesses up and deciding what niche. And I just, I had a conversation with an old OT friend she's an amazing woman, reached the top of the profession in various ways. But, on a personal level, we'd have conversations about her confidence and her fear of being found out. And, I just thought, gosh, this is just so strange that people have all of this stuff going on underneath, and the outward expression could be so different. And actually we look at other people and think, oh, they're so confident, they got themselves so sorted, why am I so rubbish, and all of this. I say these things to myself quite regularly as well.
I think we all think.
And I just thought, what? I started to think about other OTs I knew. I thought, actually, I know quite a lot of, really amazing people, so talented, so, fabulous skills, kind, creative, but the confidence particularly and the self-belief was stopping them from, one, being peaceful, but also doing sort of their, reaching their fullest potential, which is another bit of a cheesy word. And I just thought, actually it's obvious I need to coach OTs. That's what I want to do. So I put a little ad in our OT magazine, just saying, just sort of for some volunteers to do some coaching as part of my training. And I was absolutely inundated. And that kind of started everything off, really. So that was 13 years ago.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And what have you found with coaching OTs?
They're a unique breed. We are a unique breed. I expect that every profession or every group of people says that. But I really, I'm always staggered by the people I work with and their adaptability, their intuition, their creativity, their resilience, the way they can, generate all sorts of problem solving, solutions. I coached a couple of OT blokes, but on the majority they've been women, and just stunningly talented women, basically. And it's over the years, it's kind of fueled my desire for the profession to be seen in the broader context of the world. We're just kind of very little known, especially in the UK. I don't know how it is in Australia or elsewhere, but there's very much sort of doctors and nurses rule the day, etc. But I think the time is ripe for our profession to make it stand in a greater way. So that sounds a bit grandiose, but one thing I sort of often write about is the issues in the world right now are sort of basically caused by human activity, and an understanding of humans as activity beings, and what we do and what we need to do is the solution. So I think actually the time is now right for OTs to take a bigger place in the world, but we need to tackle this sort of our profile, but our underlying confidence and desire to go and do bigger things. I think that's something I like.
Jen, can I just ask, with OTs, did you have any issues around getting OTs to engage in the coaching? Because often that lack of confidence makes it difficult for them to step forward and take the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it for the first few years, it was very much OTs. They liked I did the free trial with them, and built up this sort of, not a body of knowledge in a big way, but this sort of knowing and these common themes that were coming up.
Yeah.
But then for several years, most of the OTs coming to me wanted to learn how to coach. It was about them doing coaching, and I completely got that. We're quite into sort of wanting to train and use something new and do different techniques. I mean, we're one of the most highly skilled, diverse groups of people I know. So to get people to actually have the coaching for themselves,
yes,
even as a route to understanding how it helps others, has been a real challenge. It's less so now than it was sort of 12, 13 years ago. I do sort of get more people actually go, yeah. And I think that was because the world's grown, and changed a lot in the last 12, 13 years. And I think people are more looking to self-development and accepting that sort of stuff really helps. So yeah, it is difficult, and also we're the people that sort other people out. I mean, there's been research into carers and caring professions and about how rubbish they are at getting help themselves.
Question.
Leading to a lot of burnout.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can you tell us a little bit about the OT coaching course online?
Yeah, it sort of appeared through this sort of desire for OTs to learn to coach. I wanted to coach OTs, but suddenly it was all, we want to learn this thing. Back in 2006, I put together a one-day sort of experiential workshop and ran it in the UK on a face-to-face basis for several years, and got such fab feedback. And eventually thought, well, I need this to have a broader reach. So developed what I'd got into an online course, and it's very much a first step into coaching. A sort of there are lots of really expensive courses out there, and I've often had lots of inquiries from OTs who say, "Oh, what training should I do, etc." And part of me wants to say, do the small and free stuff first, and do as much of it as you can before you commit to doing expensive training. So that was part of it, was to have something that was low cost and accessible, and it's tailored to OTs. So it's very much about some core skills in coaching, but obviously over the years, as the profession developed in its use of coaching, and my stuff has developed, you know, we've been able to say, actually, it's this bit within an OT framework, and actually it's this bit and it can do this and this. So it's changed over the years from that original conception, really. And it's free open access, so people can sort of join and do it whenever they want. There's not a you know, pairing people up and coaching, because it's we're not able to facilitate that, really. But it's very much about, you know, self-directed learning, but also you do activities, coaching activities for yourself as part of the course. And that I know, I mean, I get emails from people all the time saying, you know, I didn't realize how much it was going to help me as a person to start looking at these aspects of myself and my work and my life. So that's really gratifying as well. It takes about, I think I put a guess on about 16 to 18 hours to complete the course. But like all things, you know, I know that some people start it and might do 2 hours this week and then not come back for a couple of weeks. And
I've got a friend doing it. She's a bit like that at the moment.
Yeah. Great. And it's, you know, I've got heaps of stuff to do, some like follow-up courses and add-on bits, and it's just finding the time to kind of add those in. So yeah, it's great. I love the people access it and can do it all around the world and can do it at their own pace, and hopefully it adds a different element to their thinking as they see. So yeah.
So it adds sort of the skill set of coaching, but applied in OT.
Yeah.
And it also develops their self-awareness around themselves, so they can grow as a person and then also have this great skill set.
Absolutely. And so much of coaching is about the mindset of you as a coach and the person you're working with, and developing personal awareness as an OT, in what sort of things we believe as OTs, what ways we believe we should be working with people, or understanding how our interactions with people frame what happens in treatment or intervention or assessment or whatever. Those things are really interesting, and the relationship between two people is, you know, I think in any therapeutic environment is really underestimated. And in coaching, I think it's shown me, in my work as a coach, it's shown me actually how much you can do just by being with somebody and listening to them. Just that alone is transformational. So yeah.
Absolutely. How has the coaching changed your OT practice, other than the listening and that sort of development of that therapeutic self within the relationship?
I think it's one of the main things it's done is help me listen for people's what people really value in their lives, because unless we're working with the valued activities someone has, we're kind of pushing occupation up a hill, really. So many treatment programs and things are sort of, I think, and I've done it, have developed out of kind of either what the institution wants, you know, we want to get this person home, therefore they need to do X, Y, and Z, or what their work environment needs to do, etc. But actually sort of listening to what is going to make a person tick and what is going to give them joy. I know, again, that sounds a bit cheesy, but and flow. You know, we really need to understand or help people to understand themselves and choose activities that give them that sense. So it's the values, which is, it's a very overused word in coaching, but in OT in particular, I think what we know is how those personal values, those home values and work, sometimes they conflict, sometimes they overact, sometimes there's a tension between them. But what we can do with that is help people understand how that then directs occupation, and how we then kind of make that sort of work a bit better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have... Yep, I think Carol's agreeing.
Sorry?
You agreeing?
Absolutely, I completely agree. When I first started coaching, it was tapping into people's values that really assisted in developing their goals and developing their motivation. Very obvious that sometimes their values were something that didn't get a lot of attention in either their work or their life, and by being able to tap into that, you really validated them and gave them a lot more I suppose, motivation and strength to work out what they really wanted.
Yep. And there's I've just been looking at the work of I think his name's, I don't know how to pronounce his second name, Moses Ikiagu, and he wrote an article on instrumentalism in OT, and that's very much sort of looking at the beliefs around activities and occupation, and that I think that he's been writing about that for a while, but I've only just found his work, and I think that as well, when you add the sort of, if people start understanding their beliefs and what they value, if you add those two elements together, and people start looking at that's what they do on a daily basis, and if there's a lack of congruence between what I want and what I believe and what gives me meaning and purpose, etc., and actually what I'm doing on a daily basis is this, actually no wonder I'm struggling, no wonder I'm getting stressed or tired or whatever it is. So
or in open conflict, even it often leads to conflict within the system that they're either working or living or
absolutely.
But that conflict within and that conflict outside of themselves.
Yes.
Absolutely. And it's very tiring, being in constant conflict with who you are as a person versus what you're doing on a daily basis. We know that's OTs, and what I see coaching as doing is unlocking that awareness, actually. And I think that for me has been one of the biggest things as an OT, through coaching. It's like, what we need to be doing is this, this is what the service or the organisation wants, but actually if we're to serve the person, we need to do that. And the other thing that I suppose has been thrown up for me a lot lately is actually, what does the broader system of society need as well, because we live in quite a sort of an I focused way, and I think we need to move to more of a we focus, because again, there's lots of things we're struggling with as a society. It's like we're going, I want this and I want that, and it's my right for this and it's my wish for that. We're at odds with our environment sometimes. Environment with a small e,
So knowing all of that and applying your coaching, how has one, your OT, but also your coaching evolved over all that time?
How's it evolved, did you say?
Yeah. Because obviously you were looking at one thing in the beginning and you'd started out and you were applying coaching, but then you've developed a course and you're still applying it to OT. So everything's probably shifted and changed along the way.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the sort of course that I sort of first trained in was, we could probably label as sort of behavioural coaching. That was kind of the starting place. And like OT, we've got all of these different models in coaching. And I suppose sort of in terms of my development, there's been bits of training that have changed how I coach people, but also from a personal standpoint, and also being an OT, I've woven lots of things into it. So I do use a lot of creative activities, try and, if I'm working face to face, use drawing or collage or what have you, or get people doing an activity alongside the coaching, because I think that often helps people relax and unlock. So whether it's walking or whether it's doing some other activity, baking or whatever. I think also I'm more willing to bring my full self to the coaching. The first coach training I did, it was, you do it like this is how you do coaching. You do not give an opinion, you do not give suggestions or ideas, you don't do this, you don't do that. And as I say, it's very behaviourally focused. And 13 years down the line, I'm kind of like, well, actually, this is a co-creative activity coaching. It's about the relationship, or not just the relationship, but it's about what we create when two human beings come together. So to sort of hold so much of myself back isn't always helpful. What the awareness as a coach is about is knowing at what point the bits of me I'm bringing are overbearing or unhelpful. So, that's the bit that we want to kind of, actually, when I do that can be a bit, but also, we're human beings, and the stumbliness and the wobbly questions and the mixed up things, and they all have value. And I belong to a coaching research group in the UK that sort of meets 3 times a year. Sort of coaches all over the country come. And one lady works at an assessment centre for coaches, and she said that they watch people coaching, and they'll sit there as assessors thinking, oh, she should have done that. I don't like the way she did that, and that's not. No, we don't want that. I don't want that. But she said every single person that's been on the receiving end of the coaching said, oh, that was so good. Oh, that was so helpful. Oh gosh, something like that was so helpful. And they're all going, oh well, I've assessed her as not doing this competency and that competency, or this, she expressed her opinion there or whatever. And the people on the receiving end are just going, no, I just needed brain space and someone to think something through, someone to listen to me, someone to, so I kind of, I think there are certain core elements of how we develop as a coach that are important, but I'm not one for tick box competencies.
And I think that's the tension between your occupational therapy skills and your coaching skills. Again, if you go down that coaching and stick back and, never give an opinion and never teach a skill and never get into anything else, you kind of feel you're not really giving, or I don't feel like I'm giving 100% of what I could actually do to that client. So this is a conversation Bronwen and I have had a few times around how you marry your OT skills with your coaching skills, because I'm sure they're greater than some of the parts when it comes together.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got a lovely chap called Bob Garvey. I've spoken to him a lot about this, he calls it phronesis, so techne being the technical side of things, and phronesis being the flow, the connection, the creativity, the intuition. And he said we've become such a techne society, and in coaching, in the professional bodies, etc. This, the tick box competencies and the this assessment, that assessment, versus the creativity, the flow, the connection, the intuition, the interface. They are really important, and I think you're right. That's the bit where the OT kind of bit is helpful and stronger. But I think sometimes you have to go and learn one end of the scale to then come back and go, right, now it's kind of actually this is.
Absolutely.
And it's messy. It's messy. There's no kind of now I do this and then I do that. It's messy and it's intuitive, and it's quite, can be quite rigorous and scary sometimes.
And it's
that was
unique.
A long answer, Bronwen.
That's all right, but it's unique to each individual or group. It's never going
Absolutely.
to be the same. Doesn't matter
Absolutely.
whether you're ticking a box or not, or you're doing a standardized assessment. It will always be different.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in terms of what's happening in the UK with OTs, has anything changed sort of over the last few years, or?
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't. I mean, I've got sort of more OT departments coming and saying, we'd like to do something with coaching and run some sort of in-service training, and that's sort of always been ticking along over the years. I'm doing a nice piece of work with a children's trust at the moment, just with their OTs, looking at teaching coaching skills and integrating it into OT practice. And that's fascinating, because of course that's the whole department coming along and doing this thing we're doing together, whereas when I do the individual coach training days, that's people choosing to come along because they're interested and they want to change their practice. So it's interesting to see how the sort of wider parameters of OT are going, well, I'm not really sure about this, or if we do that and we empower this person to be in charge of themselves and their therapy, aren't we doing ourselves out of a job? Well, yeah. But you know what I mean? There's a lot of really interesting brought up, and also things like, well, we've just changed our assessment to be less globally focused, to be more focused on what we can actually do in the time that we've got this person on the ward. And now you're saying
open it back up.
Yeah. That's a really interesting piece of work. They're a fabulous bunch of people, and of course we've also got the fact that a lot of the work is with parents and carers, with children's coaching. That's where the coaching sort of is happening, and a lot of undergraduate programs are trying to put coaching into the OT training at an undergraduate level. It's a really difficult time for higher education though. So I think sort of that kind of ebbs and flows a bit. But I think, you know, when I think where we were sort of 12 years ago, I think things have changed a lot. And in the health service in the UK, there's been this big acknowledgement of we need patients to be empowered and to be in charge of their health, etc. I mean, my what's the word? Cynical side said yes because it's cheaper, cheaper if everyone is in charge of their own healthcare. But what it has done is to sort of change the philosophy. It will take a long time because in the UK we have quite a paternal thing in terms of healthcare. So, you know, in the broader sense, it's changing with our coaching. And in OT, you know, I'm still banging on about this thing called coaching sort of 13 years later. So there's a lot more people who know. So.
And I would say that's similar in Australia too. So the undergraduates are getting the training. The health services do need to consider a different way, and it is leaning towards that empowerment of the client or the person who needs the healthcare or needs the services to a certain degree. But the thing is, I think we've all been trained to be so technical, and therefore we are the experts. It's quite hard to be the expert, but also stand back and just ask the questions and just listen and let them solve some of those problems themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And for people to discover that there isn't a magic solution for their difficulties is quite hard for people. And, you know, you're supporting them through that realization often. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. I think there's lots of thoughts about where healthcare is going in the UK, and I imagine sort of in terms of Australia as well. I imagine there are similar sort of think tank looking at what we need to do over the next 20-30 years. And yeah, pretty much all of them are saying, you know, we need human beings to be thinking more like this and understanding what this and taking care of this bit of themselves and accessing information in this way and turning to their communities in that way. And actually, to enable that transition, I see coaching as fundamental because it's change, and it's difficult for people to assimilate on a personal level and an institutional level.
One of the comments we had at the last SIG that we had last week was that once you do engage with coaching with clients, they do tend to come in less often and do discharge earlier because of that empowerment. You know, and that. Coming back to your comment right at the very beginning about, you know, OTs finding their place and are awesome, I completely agree with all of that. But it seems to me it's a bit of a pathway to the coaching, a bit of a pathway to actually a way of working with clients which is more efficient and does get better outcomes. And surely that's fine. You know, surely that's got to stand out there as something unique we can offer. But I think it's the marrying of the coaching and the OT, not just the
Yeah, and I think people, you know, I wrote something from the blog the other day, was about my blog about understanding our occupational selves. And, you know, if we start, as I say, when we come back to that thing about the values and beliefs, and if we start understanding ourselves as human beings or human doings better, and, you know, the sort of, the role we have, what people can figure out themselves, etc., should in theory the need for sort of services should be less. I mean, I think that I'd hate to get to a place where people were sort of coming in for a one-off and then sort of just vanishing out of the service, because I'm not sure that's helpful either, obviously. But I do think that that operating in a coaching way can be highly efficient. I remember when I was sort of early on, I'd sort of take ages to try and get a coaching client privately. And we do 3 sessions and they just vanish into the ether happy and sorted everything out. You'd be like, this is not a good business model, you know? I need to go and find another client. But it's so potent sometimes.
Absolutely, completely.
There's coaching sessions I've had that I had 10 years ago that's still rumbling in my consciousness, that's still helping me. And that's good stuff.
And do you get coaching, Jen?
Yeah. I've just started working with someone new, which is lovely. And I've had the same person I've been working with for about 10 years, and I'm still going to work with her occasionally, but needed a different feeling and thoughts about it. So yeah.
Great. So you also run some other businesses. I understand they're also around coaching, but do you use your OT skills there, or is it part of OT? How do those other businesses work? You're building a coaching empire.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to have a big rationalisation process at the moment, because I just there's just too many things to juggle and manage. I run something called Discovery Party, which someone once described as sort of occupational therapy at home in a party format, which sounds pretty strange. But basically, what we do is go into people's homes and they gather a group of friends together, a bit like one of these home parties that you buy underwear at or whatever. And instead of buying stuff, we do coaching games and coaching activities, and it's fab. It's great fun, and I see it as a way of bringing coaching to the masses and doing it in a fun, creative way, because sometimes people look at coaching and go, well, that's just for, I can't afford that, or that's just for people in top jobs or whatever, or for people in difficulty. And I truly believe that coaching needs to be more egalitarian and more available to everyone. And it's maybe coaching with a small C, not a big C, but you know what I mean? It's kind of like, well, use this thing to help me start thinking about my life differently, but also bringing people together. We know that as OTs that aspect of belonging and talking to friends and supporting each other is so important. So that's the other side of the parties, is people helping each other as a group. So that's one thing. And I did sort of have it as a license thing, but I've developed it as another online course so that people can go and learn how to do the parties and just go off and do them, to make it a lot more accessible. Because the thing throughout my coaching journey and my development over the last 10 years is I've realised that I create a lot of things, and then I need to have someone to sort of sort that thing out for me, because I'm off creating something else. So
what's your quote, Carol, about OTs?
I was going to say that sounds so much like an occupational therapist.
Carol has a quote that she says, "We're really good starters, but we're not great finishers."
Well, I tell you what, I completely agree, but I've had to really drag the finisher out of me in recent years. Now this is done and it's online, or I've done this thing, and now but actually there's no such thing as finished sometimes, is there? It's kind of just created in a different state and you have to come back to it. So and I paint. I mean, I'm sort of got some upstairs at the moment with paintings behind me, and that's becoming a much that was always intended to become a much bigger part of my life, and I need to make space for that in my life. And it's, I think, as a mother who works and has got teenage girls and a job and things, it's very hard to make space for these. But if we come back to valued activities again, through my coaching, I've known that I need to spend more time painting. So yeah.
Apply it to yourself.
Indeedy. Yeah.
So given the changing landscape of health and organisations, and OTs working with the unwell and the well populations, what transferable skills do you think OTs have to think about that they can offer both?
Oh man, that's a great question. I have a real desire to see OTs stepping up into the world of well people in organisations, but well people who, like we all are, have different unique characteristics. There's this thing we call neurodiversity that is a big term in the UK now, and trying to help people that have, whether they're on the autism spectrum, or maybe have Asperger's or whatever, or have ADHD or bipolar disorder or whatever, recognizing that those traits are in us all actually, but to one extent or another. And I just think that there's actually, we need to help people understand their strengths in as workers, as learners, as homemakers or whatever, and express them much better, because you know, it's a real struggle for people in a work environment that doesn't suit you. If you are someone, I mean, like me, for example, you know, if I'm in an organisation and they need me to do that, and I'm trying to do this and over here, and then I'm trying to do this, it would have been fab sort of 20, 30 years ago to have help to understand me as a worker and as a person. Yeah. So I think OTs have got a huge amount they can do in organisations from a performance point of view, not just looking at things as deficits, because, you know, those deficits only often come out as part of a mismatch between the person and the environment and the occupation, don't they? So, you know, when I think about my early work life, when I burnt out and got unwell, it was because of that. It was a result of that mismatch of strengths and environment, really. So I do think OTs have got a massive role to play there. And as I've sort of alluded to earlier, this question of broader community development and environmental stuff, it's quite difficult to conceptualise it, but I think we sort of OTs are starting to do work in those fields to sort of say, patterns of occupation are causing us problems. For example, the occupation of cooking. I don't know about you guys, but we've had a big surge in recycling schemes in England in recent years. There's also been a massive surge in the amount of plastic produced because our lifestyles have changed and we're producing more and more instant foods anyway, and that's a lifestyle and an occupational. I don't. I'm not very good at the right words in terms of occupational science, but it's about how we perform our shopping and cooking and homemaking activities. So somehow we need to sort of look at how those things are ending up like that and go, actually, it's sort of because of how we structure our daily lives and what we expect of them. They're so highly complex that we end up going, right, now I need to do the online shopping and it needs to come in packets. Well, that causes so many environmental problems. And that's an aspect of doing that we need to think. So I kind of want to see OTs being, sort of starting to consult around these issues.
Because they've got the understanding of the task and the environment, but also the impact.
Absolutely. And I just think OTs just take over the world, really.
They totally can.
And I mean, schooling and education, another thing that my daughter's, my oldest daughter had a dreadful time over the last 3 years. And I just really started to understand, if there was a sort of a different way that education could work, that, it was occupation based, if it was sensory based, if it was out in the world, if it was sort of about learning to be a human being, right, God, it just would have been a lot easier for her, but not just for her, for everybody. So I want OTs to be running schools or running whatever we call them, places to become
educational places.
Yeah, places where you learn to be a human being. There's another place I want OTs to be. I want them to run the health service as well.
Oh, I think we all do. Imagine if they did.
Yes, really. Don't you?
Absolutely.
Run the health service.
Yeah.
And insurance companies.
Oh.
Well, at least we do have to grapple with that a bit here, but that's that's sort of coming to the forefront here. But at the moment, even most OTs are still working in the health service or subsidiaries of the health service. But that's a tricky one, isn't it? But I want OTs to sort of look at their skill set differently. And it's not for everyone working diversely and in a different way. I know that. But I think that if from a sort of the top of our organisation, I think if we can have a bigger vision for OT, and both the top echelons need that bigger vision, as well as us at grassroots level. So hopefully that will happen.
And it needs to be okay for OTs to work on the fringes of what has traditionally always been OT.
Absolutely.
And that fringe is getting bigger.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah,
imagine an OT consulting at Tesco about lifestyle and website design. And why, if they knew about someone's lifestyle and then their website design, and then you could determine how much didn't need to be packaged.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just track the whole thing through. Absolutely. And I think, you know, it'll happen one day, because I think it'll have to, but it will be quite nice for us to start pushing things that way from a consultancy point of view. But I think, you know, I mean, I was trained quite a long time ago, and it's quite difficult to shift your mindset into those different arenas if you haven't been exposed to them. And because I've not stayed in one job more than a couple of years at a time, and I've dipped in and out of various businesses, you tend to get quite a wacky view of the world, which I'm very proud of.
Good. So do you have any questions for us?
Oh goodness, nothing springs to mind. We've covered so much in our conversation. I mean, I'm just really pleased that you've taken on the SIG and that you're developing it, because you know, it's been a really helpful place, certainly for us over the last sort of 12, 13 years to be. And I mean, and without the SIG, we would never have written the book that we published last year or the year before, the OT coaching book.
2016, I think it was, wasn't it?
Thank you. I was just trying to remember what year,
I had to quote it somewhere the other day.
What year are we in? I'm back in 2003 personally. That's where I am most of my time. And you know, that sort of has so it's been such an important thing. And I think probably, you know, in terms of what we were just talking about in the broader context, you know, we need to have to sort of make sure we have those discussions about OT, you know, in a international sense, because we do get stuck very much in our own domain and in our own culture. So so pleased you're doing that anyway.
Showing that reasons Bronwen and I stepped up is because Jeanette has done such an awesome job. You know, she's been 10 years, and I mean, out of respect for Jeanette, it's got to continue.
Absolutely.
But I often see with OT, because we are such fabulous starters and poor finishers, somebody's running ahead of the pack and they do something really, really good, but you need people behind them to pick it up and to support and keep it going. You know, so I just really good OT progress sometimes just fall in a bit of a ditch for lack of that support coming from behind. So I think every time someone has a good idea, Jen, they'll have to encourage a protege to take it on for them when they move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because you know, I've sort of noticed some of the sort of leaders in, you know, in the UK are sort of, some of them are retiring at the moment, people that I've been, you know, admiring for years, and I'm like, no, you can't retire, come on. Keep working. But you know, because you know, there's a danger of, you know, you say you need succession planning or protege. Yeah, Jeanette's done fabulous work, and I'm really happy you both have stepped up and carried it on. So thank you from all of us. Elsewhere in the world.
Thank you for starting it all and having it move along for so long.
It's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Do you have any other words of wisdom for us?
I have a bit of a desire for OTs to become their own OTs, because I mentioned myself burning out earlier, and burnout is a bit of a problem in the profession, because we care so much, and because we've got a lot of perfectionist streaks, and because we're so good at what we do. I've sort of written about it a few times about OTs looking after themselves and becoming their own OT internally. And I think that's, from a coaching point of view, you know, have your own coaching as OTs, but also start developing a mindset that sort of looks at your own person from a, if you were your own therapist, what would you be telling yourself right now if you're your own OT or coach? And actually, hopefully then we might be a bit kinder to ourselves, and this sort of thing called burnout might be less likely. So go and be your own OT.
Is that part of your course? Have you got that in your course?
Yeah, in the course, a little bit. Yeah, I mean the sort of actually it's something that I was going to sort of write a new module to kind of bolt on somehow, but I've written a couple of articles about being your own OT, and it's a really fascinating thing. I often, if I'm feeling sort of a bit depleted or struggling with something, I do kind of sit down and go, right, if you were your own OT right now, what would you be saying to yourself?
You could coach yourself out of it.
Yeah.
Am I doing? Yeah.
So, and the other question is, am I doing enough of the valued activities or the things that give me meaning and purpose? Am I doing enough of that? And if not, why not? And the why not is a very difficult question. It's not a throwaway question. It's a deep and lengthy one.
But there's often a little bit of gold in that why not.
Yeah.
Those moments of I didn't realize I was doing so much for somebody else or something else.
Absolutely. But I've loved the conversation today with you both. It's been fabulous. Thank you so much for inviting me. And
thank you for talking. Everyone will be really happy to hear about what you've done, what you're doing, because it's come up quite a few times about the OT coach course online. So I think it will be really nice for people to have a face and have heard some of the stuff that you're doing and that you've done. And what we might do is put your details in an email before we send out the invitation for the next SIG with any links that you want us to put in there.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Super.
Do you have anything else, Carol?
No, just to say thank you very much for your time, Jen. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's lovely to meet you, Carol. I've met Bronwen before briefly, but nice to meet you too. And I've met you on the SIG before, but it's nice to put a face to a voice. Have a lovely rest of your day, although it's evening time now, isn't it? So
it is. Thank you.